Welcome to Lavender Town Radio, where shadows whisper and every story hides a darker truth. Tonight, let me take you deeper into the world of Pokémon you were never meant to see. My name is Roxanne. As the gym leader of Rustboro City and a teacher at the Trainers Academy, my life is a series of neatly organized schedules, logical lectures, and battles based on solid strategy. I am a woman of rock and fossils, a person who believes in what can be proven, classified, and understood. And I was burned out. Between the stacks of ungraded papers, the endless meetings with the Devon Corporation, and the incessant chatter of ambitious students, I did something I had never done before. I ran away. I lied about an urgent geological seminar, packed a small bag, and took the first ferry to the quietest place I could think of, Dewford Town. Oh, what a perfect choice. A tiny island where the biggest news of the day was that a Wingull had stolen someone's sandwich. No tall buildings, no packed schedules, just the sound of the waves, the smell of salt, and a wonderful, glorious silence. This is it, I told myself as I stepped onto the wooden pier. Serenity. I had expected to be greeted by Brawly, the island's gym leader, a friendly match, a few discussions on technique. But when I asked after him, a local just shrugged. Oh, Brawly? He took his kayak to Slateport, heard there was a big sale on a limited edition surfboard. I stood there in the middle of the pier, utterly speechless. A surfboard sale? I'd rearranged my entire schedule, lied to the school board, only to arrive and find that my colleague had abandoned his post for a wooden plank. A hot, unpleasant anger flared within me. But then I took a deep breath. No, I came here to relax. Brawly's absence was probably for the best. Total solitude. That's when I began to realize that the island wasn't serene. It was holding its breath. I went to this island to find peace. Instead, I found a town that was being watched. The wealth was the first thing I noticed. Dewford had always been a humble town, but now the simple wooden houses had newly polished decks. The people wore new clothes. Where had all this money come from? The answer was in the town center, where a new shop had opened, Treasures of Granite Cave. Inside, gemstones glittered under the lights. They weren't diamonds or rubies. They were deep purple, perfectly cut stones with an inner light that seemed to dance. Beautiful, aren't they? The shop owner, an older man named Jed, said. We found a new vein, deep in Granite Cave. Never seen anything like it. We're calling them Nightfall gems. I bought a small one as a souvenir, and as I held it, I had the strangest feeling that it was growing warm in my palm. The second strange thing was the behavior of the townspeople. They seemed on edge, constantly glancing over their shoulders. They spoke to each other in hushed tones, and above all, they avoided reflective surfaces. The windows of the shops were covered with thick curtains. The mirrors in the inn where I was staying were turned to face the wall. Even the puddles of rainwater on the dirt paths made them take a wide berth. That night, as I was walking along the beach, I saw it for the first time. A small, purple glimmer from the darkness of an alley. When I turned to look, it was gone. Probably the eyes of a purloin, I told myself, but it didn't feel like an animal. It felt like being watched. The island's gym leader had vanished. The only thing left to greet me were the eyes in the walls. The feeling of being watched grew worse. It was like an invisible pressure on the back of my neck. I started jumping at the smallest sounds. My anger at Brawley had curdled into a bitter resentment. If he were here, he could explain what the hell was going on. His absence made me feel trapped, isolated with a problem that wasn't mine. On the third day, I decided to confront my fear. I went to my inn, into the bathroom, and turned the mirror around. For a second, everything was normal. I saw my own tired face looking back. But then, in the reflection of the hallway behind me, I saw them. Not one, but dozens of pairs of glowing purple eyes staring out from the darkness of the mirror. They weren't a reflection of anything in the room. They were inside the mirror. I screamed and stumbled back, falling out of the bathroom. When I found the courage to look again, they were gone. Only my normal reflection remained. I stopped trying to rationalize it. I am a scientist, and the data was becoming clear. Something was here. Something that lived in mirrors. I went to see Jed, the gem shop owner. He looked even worse than I felt, with dark circles under his eyes and trembling hands. "It's the gems," he whispered when I recounted my story. "We made a terrible mistake, Ms. Roxanne." He explained that after they started mining the gems, the phenomena began. First, the feeling of being watched, then the glimmers, and then the nightmares. Everyone in town was having the same dream. They were in a dark cave, and hundreds of small creatures with gemstone eyes were watching them hungrily. "They don't want to hurt us," Jed said, his voice shaking. "They just want to look, but they're driving us mad."
The paranoia wasn't just in my head. I found the first victim, and I saw what the gemstones had replaced. That night, a scream tore through the Dewford silence. It came from the home of an old fisherman named Finn. I was one of the first to arrive. His door was wide open. Finn was sitting in a chair facing us, but he wasn't seeing us. He was staring at something far away. His face was a blank mask, and his eyes, they were no longer human. Where the cloudy blue irises of an old man should have been, there were two perfectly cut, deep purple gemstones. They were identical to the nightfall gems sold in the shop. They glittered in the light, reflecting our horrified faces in 100 tiny images. He wasn't blind. I could see the gems shifting slightly, tracking our movements. But it wasn't Finn who was looking. It was something else. The horror had crossed into physical violation. This was no longer a ghost story. It was a biological invasion. I lost my composure. I yelled into my X-transceiver, berating whoever was on the other end about Brawley's incompetence, about how this island needed help. My frustration and fear boiled over. I was no longer the calm gym leader Roxanne. I was just a scared, trapped, and angry woman. After I calmed down, I knew there was only one person who could help, someone who understood stones and ancient mysteries better than anyone. I called Stephen Stone.
To fight a monster that lives in mirrors, you can't use force. You have to give it something prettier to look at. Roxanne, Stephen's calm voice came through the X-transceiver, a stark contrast to my panic. Calm down and tell me exactly what you've seen. I told him everything. The gems, the feeling of being watched, the mirrors and Finn's eyes. He was silent for a long moment. Sableye, he finally said. A large colony. You didn't tap into a gem vein. You woke up their nest. Those gems they're selling, they aren't minerals. They're their shed eyes. But why are they doing this? I asked. Why replace people's eyes? They aren't malicious, Roxanne. They are obsessive, Stephen explained. Their diet is gemstones, but their obsession is shiny things, light, reflection. You said the townspeople are avoiding mirrors, correct? That's because Sableye can use any reflective surface as a gateway. When they see the reflection of a human eye, they see two living, glittering gems. They become covetous. So we have to fight them? No, Steven said. Fighting a creature that can vanish into a puddle is pointless. You can't beat them with force. You have to distract them. Sableye are drawn to the shiniest thing. You have to give them something more beautiful, more brilliant than a human eye to look at. His words sparked an idea in my mind. A crazy plan, but it was all I had.
We saved the town by giving the darkness a new toy. But now, every time I look in the mirror, I have to check if my eyes are still my own. I gathered the villagers. My plan was simple. We would give back what we took. All the money you've made from those gems, I told them, we're going to use it. We contacted the Devon Corporation. I used my name and Steven's to place an emergency order. The largest, purest, uncut quartz crystal they could find, and a high-powered LED lighting system. 2 days later, it arrived on a cargo ship. The crystal was the size of a small car, its facets glittering even in the daylight. That night, we put the plan into action. We brought the crystal to the center of Granite Cave, where the Nightfall gem vein had been found. I had my Geodude and Nosepass use their strength to set up the lighting system, aiming all of them at the crystal. "Everyone, get out now," I ordered. I was the last one to leave. I stood at the cave entrance, took a deep breath, and gave the signal. The lights turned on. Inside the cave, the crystal exploded with light. It became a brilliant beacon, thousands of rainbow refractions shooting out, dancing on the stone walls. And then they came. From the damp surfaces of the cave walls, from the small puddles on the floor, they emerged. Hundreds of Sableye. They weren't scary. They looked awestruck. They gathered around the crystal, their gemstone eyes wide, reflecting the light in a mesmerizing display. They had found the shiniest thing. I backed away slowly and left the cave. The next morning, the feeling of being watched was gone. The air in Dewford felt lighter. We went to see Finn. The 2 purple gems had fallen from his eye sockets, leaving 2 empty, dark holes. He was blind, but he was lucid. He was himself again. I left Dewford that day. Browley had just returned, carrying a shiny new surfboard, completely oblivious to the nightmare his town had just endured. I didn't say a word. I just gave him a look of contempt that he could never possibly understand. I returned to my logical, orderly life in Rustboro. But something has changed. Sometimes at night, when I'm standing in front of my mirror, I'll see a glimmer in the corner of my eye, and I'll have to place my hands on the cold glass just to make sure that the reflection I see and the eyes that are looking back at me are still truly my own.